Check, check. Check, check.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us here at the Mechanics Institute. I'm Laura Shepard, Director of Events, and I'm very pleased to welcome you back to our program with the Catamaran Literary Reader. We are so thrilled to have this ongoing collaboration, and I know that you're going to enjoy a lot of the readings tonight. And as Alyssa said, please join us here at Mechanics for our weekly tours on Wednesday at noon, and also we hope that you'll take the tour after our program if you are new to Mechanics Institute. So once again, we're so thrilled to participate with Catamaran and enjoy their incredible, inspiring literary contributions and also the gorgeous artwork which you see here. So first, I'd like to welcome Catherine Sigerson, who's the founder and editor-in-chief. She has initiated this incredible magazine for the last 12 years, and she will introduce our program and our speakers and readers tonight. Welcome, Catherine.
Hello everyone. Welcome to the launch event of the 44th issue of Catamaran. So a little bit about us. We're a nonprofit literary and educational organization founded in 2012 in Santa Cruz. And we love coming up to San Francisco and bringing some of our wonderful writers and poets to you here in this beautiful historical location. And I've been the editor for 12 years, and I kind of aspire to Laura Shepard, who has run this wonderful program for 20 plus years. 24 years. Okay. So I aspire to do Catamaran that long, hopefully. We publish Catamaran quarterly, and we feature all kinds of really interesting writing. We feature environmental, science, and nature writing. So in this issue, you're going to find all kinds of interesting things to read. There's an essay called Whales and Wandering, taking you from Moby Dick to the coast in the Pacific. There's Older Sister by Joo-Hee Kim, who talks about her Korean family and their life in Portland and Los Angeles. There's some younger writers in this. This Nothing That We Dream is by Nico Bailey, who is a trans writer and who tells a really interesting, tough story about being accepted for that, and it's coming of age too, so dealing with his parents. There's a young writer who wrote an essay called Powder Days, and he's in his 20s writing his memoir. So I don't know about that, but he is a ski instructor, but it gets into the mindset like of his doing the drugs and the mental health and just struggling, and now he's writing these types of essays and getting published in like Outside Magazine and all. So we're happy to feature these younger writers as well. There's an African American writer with a story called Anna about a witch, and but they're not here tonight. I'm just giving you a sort of sneak preview if you get the magazine of all the really interesting stuff that we publish. I may not look sort of hipster or avant-garde, but like I can find and publish avant-garde work on my magazine. And then we do, on top of the 4 issues, we do a book of poetry every year, and it's called the Catamaran Poetry Prize for West Coast poets. You have to live in one of the West Coast states. It's the only prize for West Coast poets, And we aim to be a voice at the West Coast with that. And one of the winners of the prize is here tonight. And we have the books there. And the contest is open now. And it's open till June 15th. So if you're a poet and you would like to submit to us, you could win a prize and we would publish your book. And this is the 7th year of that contest. We also do a summer writing conference. We're moving to doing it every other year, so this summer is a year off. A lot of the conference members who came. Yes, previous conference attendees are all here. It's so wonderful to see you, and it's wonderful to do this in-person workshops with writers where they can get together and work on their craft. And we're going to do some online workshops in between years, so we'll let you know about that. So without further ado, we're going to start with the presentation, and to help do the introductions. Okay, this is Elizabeth McKenzie, the managing editor. I forget my glasses to see. She'll have to bring hers, but today I have one. All right, our first reader will be Todd Turnidge. Todd Turnidge is a writer, computer programmer, and parent living in Northern California. He recently received his MFA from Pacific University, where he was a recipient of the Marvin Bell Endowed Scholarship in Poetry. His poems are forthcoming in Alaska Quarterly Review and Copper Nickel. So please welcome Todd Turnidge.
Hello. Yeah, this is my first poem to actually come out in print, and hopefully it won't be the last. All right, the poem that appears in Catamaran is called Fallen. After the storms, I discover a tree pulled down by its own weight, a patriarch, a live oak, with a lush crown of gray wilting leaves, and a terrible mess of root stuff ripped up from below. The unremitting rains had made the ground soft, and so the tree's sturdy history was not enough to hold it fixed to the earth. Its wide, proud arms are shattered at many wrists, and all its former privacies lie naked to the white sky. I miss my father. So in the magazine that appears next to a really beautiful piece of artwork of a tree, and I really was just amazed at what a great choice that was. All right, the rest of these haven't been approved by anybody, so. In the catalog of pleasures, baking bread, baby faces and the like, there are many worthy entries and configurations, though none will ever smell so wholesome, nor evoke so perfect a complacency as a fine divorce. All those pressing problems never to be solved, and when have I ever been this happy to dine alone? After I pay my check, I plan to paint my body green and run spinning down the street. I may steal a petunia from the pot outside the Togo's sandwich shop and propose to the next human being that I meet, just to have the hope of future escape and another chance to drink, to drink from this sloppy chalice of failure. I decided to throw in a Santa Cruz poem. How many of you guys know Sunny Cove Beach? Yeah, okay. This one's called Mayhem. In the divorce, I got the beach house. Not bad. But it came with Ed next door, package deal. Ed says his stereo system is so good when he listens to Prince live, it sounds like Prince isn't dead. And I can testify his outdoor speakers are top notch because he leaves them turned up, even when he's indoors, asleep, in front of a TV police procedural, drunk, on Don Julio 1942, while the sounds of gunshots, hurried footsteps, and hard-boiled jokes ricochet from the prim faces of the houses across the gully. Mayhem. An egret on the beach is unimpressed. From the balcony, Ed shouts, "Hey, brother," whenever he can't remember my name. which is all the time. And when I was married, I claimed I despised him because he was so uncouth. He would cup his hands and yell, "Want to try my hot tub?" At the darting schools of women lugging blankets and six-packs to the beach. I was perplexed to observe that some said yes. Some still do. Later, when my life was rearranged, taken apart like a riverbank by heavy rain, though faster, time lapsed. When I was spread wide as the San Joaquin Delta, I understood. I hated Ed because he was alive and I wasn't. My issue, turns out, was with the pinched, Protestant, Midwestern, fake, intellectual, hamstrung husband, bullshit friend, bullshit everything excuse that I'd become over the decades while I was waiting for someone responsible to intervene in my life. And my life was like that police procedural Ed was watching echoing across the cove, a hostage episode. And I was both the hostage and the hostage taker. I was also the police negotiator saying, "Talk to me, son. What do you want?" "I want a hot tub and a jet to Mexico." And another chance to fall in love and hair like Elvis. "Sure, son, hang on. We'll see what we can do." The egret is walking on the sand, an apocalypse for some poor crab. And I'm knocking on Ed's front door. I've got a bottle of wine from MB Liquors, something in the mid-$20 range, a rosé. We're going to move on from divorce.
Please do.
Here's a poem called 1977. A man approached Carly in the park, told her, "You would have been a knockout in the 70s. Which is a bit obnoxious, though I find I agree and I can't explain why. It's nothing obvious, no Farrah Fawcett feathered tresses, no bell-bottom jeans, no Led Zeppelin cranked while she writes in her kitchen. I don't know what it is, but it's indisputable, as if her posture has been lifted from an old yellow photograph. Some aspect of her stance, how she leans against her doorway, an unself-consciousness. People stood differently in the 70s, back when film was costly and photos were few. She's unedited, part of the physical world, hair astray, sweat on her lip, confidently democratic of the people. And in her person, she exhibits the languor and proportion of a beauty standard improperly abandoned. She looks so good. There's something delinquent in her smile, a kind of mischief. She looks like the bad kid in school. And when I see her, I feel like I'm living in 1977 again. I was 5 and rode a big wheel. She wasn't even born, but still. She makes me want to steal a souped-up Chevy Camaro and throw her the keys just so I can watch as she rolls the window down and drives away. All right, last one here. This one's called Gilroy. Recent rain fills an old tire track. A single frog calls. I wonder how he got there. Carly says frogs get everywhere. She once found one in her fridge. Carly says if I move to Gilroy, I get to wear a cowboy hat whenever I want and grow red tomatoes and roses. Gilroy looks like Tuscany if you squint. Hills after hills, mustard fields. This tire track is a brand new ecosystem. A week ago it was nothing, a tractor rut, a farmer's U-turn. Maybe with luck, a frog can head out blind in the rain and guess when it's time to stop. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks all of you for being here this evening. Our next reader is Amethyst Loscocco. She's a writer of fiction and nonfiction. She has an MA in science writing from Johns Hopkins University. Her works appeared in the Science Writer, Hexagon, Sundial Magazine, and elsewhere. She grew up on a farm near Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, and now lives in Oakland, California. Please welcome Amethyst Loscocco.
I'm nervous, but I'm honored to be in such great company. This is an abridged version of an essay called A Season of Sky Rivers. The electricity was out again, the house was dim, the sky bruised, the damp seeped into my bones as hinges creaked and doors groaned. I was without heat, lights, and perhaps most disconcerting, internet. Without distraction, I heard destruction. Hills slid into homes, cars slipped into ditches, the rain met hurricane force gusts, tilting to spray willfully sideways as if gravity had shifted 90 degrees. Like giants that can't hold up the sky a moment longer, eucalyptus trees toppled and on roads and homes. I'd never seen rain like this in California, in drought-stricken, now flood-ridden California. The rain was torrential. Torrent is a word rooted in parched earth and thirst that when met with rushing water creates a gushing that is not gentle but fierce and forceful. Across California, puddles became creeping lakes and rivers seeped over boundaries. People died on flooded freeways and under fallen trees. A levee in Pajaro broke. Thousands evacuated their homes filled with mud and water. The downpour was just one of a series of atmospheric rivers that soaked the West Coast between November of 2022 and March of 2030. Atmospheric river is a term I've only become aware of in recent years as it makes headlines alongside words like drench and deluge and destruction. As I listen to the roar of the rain, I picture a giant river defying gravity, whirling, eddying its way over the Pacific and crashing into the crumbling California coastline. I am not wrong, it is a sky river. Atmospheric rivers are narrow currents of air that channel enormous amounts of water vapor toward the west coasts of all the world's continents. They can be up to 375 miles wide and thousands of miles long, sometimes stretching across an entire ocean basin, such as the Pacific. Atmospheric rivers can carry 15 times as much water as the Mississippi River, or twice as much as the Amazon. When an atmospheric river reaches land, the water vapor cools and dumps rain and snow. Atmospheric rivers are a normal weather phenomenon, providing up to 50% of California's annual rainfall. The state averages 6 to 8 atmospheric rivers per year. Often they are mild and provide beneficial rain, but depending on their intensity and duration, they can cause significant damage. In the 2022-23 winter, 31 atmospheric rivers hit the West Coast, with around 16 in California. The San Francisco Bay Area experienced its wettest period in 162 years. In the winter of 1862, a series of back-to-back atmospheric rivers caused it to rain for 45 days. Torrents of water drained from the Sierra Nevada into the Sacramento and San Joaquin valleys, creating an inland lake 300 miles long and 20 miles wide. The deluge drowned 800,000 cattle and washed away homes, crops, and businesses. Thousands of people died. The city of Sacramento was submerged under 10 feet of muddy water, forcing the state government to temporarily relocate to San Francisco. It took 6 months for Sacramento to dry out. The destruction quickly bankrupted the sodden state. Studies of the paleoclimate record show that megastorms, like the one that caused the Great Flood of 1862, occur every 100 to 200 years. We are due for another one. Despite the above average number of atmospheric rivers recently, their intensity and duration doesn't compare to a megastorm which would have longer periods of nonstop rain. In 2011, the USGS assembled experts from NOAA, Scripps, the University of California, and other institutions to determine just how catastrophic it could be. They found a megastorm today would be significantly more devastating than the 1862 storm. More people, industries, and infrastructure exist in the regions at risk for floods, landslides, and coastal erosion. The state can expect more than $725 billion in damage and economic losses. That is 3 times the amount estimated by the USGS's shakeout scenario that modeled a 7.8 magnitude earthquake on the San Andreas Fault, sometimes known as the Big One. The megastorm is California's other big one, and just as plausible. The highly variable climate of the West Coast naturally swings between series of dry and wet years. Even in severe drought, the potential for devastating floods lurks around the corner. Climate change is making those swings more extreme. Multiple studies indicate that climate change will increase the number and severity of atmospheric rivers. We are wedged between the potential energy of plausible cataclysms. Plans these days involve dodging disasters. In 2020, I postponed my wedding because of a global pandemic. Then we decided against a summer wedding because of the certainty of wildfires and smoke. In California, we expect wildfire season, those months now firmly entrenched between summer and fall like a fifth season. Climate change to date has more than tripled the risk of a megastorm compared to a century ago. Continued warming will steadily increase that risk, but by how much depends on global efforts to combat climate change. In every good story, there's an inciting incident that sparks change and forces people to make difficult choices and solve problems against impossible odds. Despite the destruction these atmospheric rivers may not be it, I know that. But I wonder what the inciting incident will be if it's not Paradise or Leona disappearing in a firestorm, if it's not atmospheric rivers submerging towns, if it's not children breathing wildfire smoke for months every year, if it's not drought drying up farm towns in the Central Valley, if it's not the threat of constellations of island nations winking out as they sink below the Pacific, what will it take? Whatever the inciting incident, I wonder if it will be too late. Just as we have adapted to wildfire season, so too we now adapt to the season of sky rivers and floods. We expect them. We buy generators for power outages, masks for smoke, sandbags for floods. These actions support resilience, but not sustainability and change. How we react to each cataclysm reveals one thing. We adapt faster than we change. Adaptation often benefits survival, but perhaps now it is to our detriment. Eventually, the wind and rain eased, the electricity was restored, the refrigerator beeped once, and little lights reignited on all my appliances. A soft hum came from somewhere. I had internet. I was fine. Everything was fine. For now.
Yeah, so at Catamaran, we have open submissions year-round, and I go and dive in and read the submissions, and I was reading submissions during an atmospheric river when I came across this piece by Amethyst, and then I quickly assigned it to the other editors and said, you have to read this right now. Thank you, Amethyst. Our next reader is Andrew Fague. Andrew Fague's poems are in Catamaran Literary Reader, Windfall, Chicago Quarterly Review, Salt, Zenocti Journal, Porter Gulch Review, Frenzy, and elsewhere. For 20 years, he has taught writing, literature, mythology, and poetry workshops at various colleges on the West Coast. Currently at Cabrillo College, he lives in Santa Cruz, California. Please welcome Andrew Fague.
Thanks, Catherine. I don't have enough time to express what Catamaran means to me. It's just such a positive, supportive presence for so many writers and artists and poets like me, and the editors themselves and people that just come to trust over the years. It's just kind of this continuous act of beauty that we all kind of take for granted, and I know in between issues though it's just sort of a scramble and for funding and grants and all the rest. High maintenance writers. I want to read just a couple poems. First one, they're both part of a cycle of poems about water, and so I don't know, there's poems, one from a perspective of a redwood, or in the context of surfing, or multinational corporate theft, or a river sort of underneath holding the rocks against the current. This one is from the perspective of an alchemist. It's called In the Middle Ages. I distilled the water 1,000 times, chanting with the same inflections, and still the fluid is no heavier, its elements no less ebullient. So I'll boil, cool the life source again, because if old age is the accumulation of heavy water in a living body, then I must find what is heavy first, then discover in what evaporates what I need to make of myself a cloud floating through centuries. What is an hour if I'm patient? What clock can hold the great work of my furnace, crucible, scales, beakers, and hydrometer? What does time mean to water? And the poem that's in the magazine is also part of the water cycle. The epigraph is, so it's called Metamorphosis, and the epigraph is from Franz Kafka, the Metamorphosis, and it's just the first line of the story. As Gregor Samson woke up one morning from unsettling dreams, he found himself transformed in his bed into an enormous beetle. And if you haven't read it, things don't go well for Gregor. He's sort of ashamed, kind of apologetic about it, you know. His family sort of meets him with this sort of bourgeois indifference that, you know, it always comes with like little microaggressions, and it turns into alienation and isolation until he sort of loses the will to eat or drink. So, yeah, that's what I'm bringing home with that. And then also, I'm talking about newts, just to make sure salamanders, I think, live all around here where there's water. I bring the newt up into my palms, and he does not break his pace, just keeps walking up and over the side of one palm so that I have to catch him with the other. He keeps striding across one hand to the next as I lower him back onto the ground, where one of his webbed feet catches a little stiff-edged, jagged live oak leaf and flips past halfway, revealing his orange underside and large jointed legs, which continue to rotate in the air until his tail steers them the ground again, back on course to the yearly reproductive ritual down at the local pond. He was born to his mother within the self-same imprint of hill water, gopher holes flowing the winter long until around now, when the rains relent to mist, the green and blossoming bizarre after the bitter turn of the year, storms infuriating trees onto houses, limbs onto wires, leaves, debris over where he must have been for months, buried in, socially unavailable, unemployed, deadbeat. Now he's 2 or 3 weeks into his journey by the light of the sun, and also navigating by the stars to the sacred family pool, where he will metamorphose, tail broadening and flattening, skin smoother, lightening to gold, while his procreative organ pulses his whole body like a nocturnal emission into its aquatic phase. I'm feeling out the trail so as to avoid slipping onto my ass again down the soft, green, muddy bridge dented with old groves, creeks trickling, winking at the breeze as they run the valley. All along the path, the newts like embers in a low wind make their way. Walking amidst a horde of them, I feel like an initiate while trying not to step on anyone in the ceremony. There's a large log, and I pause to rest. What would Franz think of all this? I imagine him with a silver pin, ducking out of the drizzle, looking up to ask if anything's new. In the distance, I make out a newly groomed parking lot. I nod in that direction, just as a cedar far above drips onto my forehead, and I wonder how to form thoughts without their predecessors. Also, how my body could ever feel wholly different from any other body. I've taken to the glen and walked in the way one attends to unsettling dreams. Here they are, a scattered procession towards a secret fire. I want to ask Kafka, why can't your Gregor just keep changing in chorus with the plays of people like this? Why, in the end, is he starved, deserted? I want to ask, but first I offer him water. Thanks. Any questions? Anybody wants to talk Santa Cruz and San Francisco poetry? Let's do it.
Oh, okay. Is that working? Like, is that working? Okay. So our next reader is Clara Oshetsky. And I hope you'll be interested in reading more about her writing process because we have an interview with her in this. I was able to, I felt very fortunate to be able to talk to her about that, about her new book, Poor Dear, and about her old book, Chouette. And it's carried in this issue. And we also have a story by Claire in this issue. Clara Oshetsky's novel, Chouette, was longlisted for the 2022 Penn Faulkner Award for Fiction and won the 2022 William Soroy's International Prize for Writing. Their latest novel is Poor Dear, published in January 2024 by Echo. Oshetsky lives in Santa Cruz, California. Please welcome Claire Oshetsky.
A little robin's egg. She is sitting with her baby in her favorite spot to nurse, a wing-back chair by the window. She has her son to keep her company, just the two of them alone in the house. She isn't afraid, but still, could the milk be effective? She switches the boy to the other side. Milk from this side always comes gushing out. Sometimes she chokes him with it while he happily spits it out and clutches for more. Her fingers come back to it. It's shaped like a little robin's egg. Exactly the shape and size of a little robin's egg under the right arm. Since she found it there, the room has filled with jangling light. She's at a loss to explain it. She's lost. She looks back at the baby to find herself. The baby gazes back, eyes, lips, and beats on her breasts with tiny fists. She has never liked her breasts. She won't tell her husband right away. When she says the words, she'll need to say, "Don't worry, it's probably nothing." But she'll bungle it because her voice will quaver at the end. Because her mother died of it. One day, just as her mother was serving her father the last bit of bacon from the pan, she leaned over and said to him, "You know, hon, it feels just like a little robin's egg, just under my right arm." And he had looked back at his wife as if looking at his wife through a window or across a valley. And 7 months later, he had left them. Her grandmother had come to stay and stayed to the end. The baby, sleeping and sated, lets her go. She walks to the nursery and lays him back in his crib. And then she walks around the house, stupidly, touching chairs, walls, cabinet knobs, until her husband comes home with chicken in a bucket, plus a kid's baseball mitt. He kisses her as if nothing terrible has happened, and then the two of them go to see the sleeping baby, the way new parents do. Her husband lays the mitt in the crib next to his sleeping son. Her husband still can't believe the fact of this baby. He lays the baseball mitt inside the crib next to his still sleeping son, and the mitt's as long as the baby from shoulder to hip. She laughs too loudly, and the baby wakes up and cries, and her husband lifts him up, and he stops crying and gives his daddy's face 3 soft smacks. Now they're in the kitchen. Her husband is holding the baby with one big hand pressed to his chest. He's eating chicken in a bucket with the other hand while the baby suckles on his shirt. He leaves the drumsticks for her because she likes them, but she isn't hungry. I'm tired, she says. I'll clean up, he says. Already the baby is ready to nurse again. He's complaining about it. She brings him back with her to her favorite wingback chair and takes the left breast out, and the baby latches on. The clatter of the man washing dishes in the kitchen comforts her a little. She sniffs the top of her baby's head, the way mothers do. When her son has had enough, he lets go, asleep again, and she carries him to his crib and lays him down next to the ridiculous mitt. And by this time, it has been a good long time since she has last thought about anything important. And so she goes down the hall and into the bathroom and shuts the door behind her. She unbuttons her shirt. She looks at the woman in the mirror. Are you sick? She says. She tries to hear the answer. She tries a good long time. She tries so long that her husband comes looking for her, and when she doesn't answer his knock, he opens the door, and she wants to say it's probably nothing, but she can't say it. And she tries to say, do you love me enough? But she can't say it. And so she takes his hand and presses his fingers there. She feels his fingers feel it. The air between them jitters like heartbeat. The world all around is dark and utterly still.
Thank you, Claire. Our next reader is Lou Mathews, and Lou has come here all the way from Los Angeles to be with us tonight. Lou Mathews has written 7 books and published 3 of them, Just Like James, LA Breakdown, which was a Los Angeles Times best book, and Shaky Town. He has taught at the University of California, Los Angeles, Extension's acclaimed creative writing program since 1989. His stories have been published in Ziziba, New England Review, Short Story, Black Clock, and more than 40 other literary magazines. His short stories are used in 2 textbooks, Portals, and Gotham Writers Workshop Fiction Gallery, and have been widely anthologized, most recently in Paperback LA. Please welcome Lou Mathews.
This is from a new novel called Hollywoodsky, which will be coming out this next year in January. And the narrator is a man called Dale Davis, who describes himself as a faded screenwriter. And his friends say, don't you mean a failed screenwriter? And he says, no, only poets can fail. Screenwriters can only fade because the bar is set too low. Quality of Life, 2007. 3 o'clock of the afternoon at my usual haunt, Carlton Liquors, and I bump up against Chief Bratton's Quality of Life. The Chief's high concept, evolved and refined in his previous tour of duty in New York City, boils down to this: sweat the small stuff. CB believes that if you fix the broken windows, arrest public urinators and defecators, untolerate graffiti, i.e. improve the quality of neighborhood life, the big-time crime, rapes, robberies, assaults, murders, will also dwindle. The way that I find out about the new policies is with the shift change, the Hollywood cop shop. In the past, a shift change meant at least an hour of uninterrupted peace. I planned my day accordingly. The day shift came in from wherever they had been hiding, and the night shift needed at least an hour to find their hidey holes. Cop morale in Hollywood has been so bad for so long that we degenerates depend on it. It started with a vast batch of bad bus and wrongful death cases. A decade of multi-million-dollar judgments made Hollywood division gun-shy. Arrests mean trouble, or at least paperwork, and a generation of cops decided to hang out and hide out until the pension was in view. But today, shift changes. Bang, zoom. Black and white pulls up and blocks the driveway, and two energetic Latina cops get out, braced, to let Herman and me know that we represent blight on the quality of life on our particular corner of Gower and Carlton Way. Herman is nodding in his wheelchair in the corner of the lawn, and I'm sitting quietly in my Saturn reading the sports page, a discreet callboy of Rainier Ale, nestled in the open console, pretty well hidden, I thought, by my paper. In the side mirror, I can see Officer Hernandez. Her name plaque glows like neon, take a stance, holding up her walkie-talkie like a weightlifter, and reading my license number forcefully into the microphone. Her partner, gotta be 6 feet tall, Officer Lopez, is at the passenger side open window. "Good afternoon, sir," Officer Lopez booms. "May I ask if that is an alcoholic beverage you have there in your center console?" I roll the newspaper and hold up the guilty can. "And am I correct in surmising that this is an open container, one you have been drinking from?" I nod. "Then may I ask you to please step out of the vehicle, sir?" Herman chooses the wrong time to come to life. Herman is small, black and bald, surprisingly clean-shaven. I heard once that a sister visited and maintained him. Usually he has collapsed on himself, but in my defense, his head pops up. He drops his empty night train bottle with a loud clink and rolling clatter and wheels out. "You don't gotta get out the car unless they got a warrant, because you're not driving. This ain't the street. This ain't a jurisdiction. I've been through this one. I know the law on this one." I look at the posted sign on the wall in front of my windshield with this numerical citation of the city code. Drinking of alcoholic beverages is prohibited, and no good can come of this. Officers Hernandez and Lopez stand up from the gun class of crouches that Herman's drop bottle provoked, turn and stare at my advocate. "This here is private property," Herman says, fierce and assured as the neocon. No good can come from this. Herman may even be right. He is bright, and when he was ambulatory, he did enough jail time to really study law. I wouldn't know. I just want this to go away. The open container ticket is $65. I've paid it before. It's an occupational expense. I am known as a good citizen. I do pay my taxes. Every day before I park at Carlton Liquors, the first hungry, smokeless, drinkless soul to reach my fender knows that I'm good for a buck. I'm glad to pay my tax and sip and read in peace. Chief Bratton has disturbed my peace. Herman rolls up to my window, flanked by the swiveling cops. "Don't get out the car," Herman hisses. "Trust me on this, Davis," Herman whispers. "I know the law on this one." "The law? The law?" An unmistakable screeching voice penetrates our lawyer-clad conference. Mona, preceded by her familiar taint, patchouli and sulfur, struts onto our stage. Today, wearing a red vinyl halter, black Raider sweatpants, and a lime tutu. At her best, trolling for clients drunk enough to focus on her low-rent implants and ignore her prominent Adam's apple and bristling jaw, Mona looks like a Sunday crow. She has a bright and cognizant eye and a need for shining objects. I should mention here that Mona and I have a history. She is no respecter of honest taxpayers. Whenever Mona reels into view, she wants money. Give me $10 is her opening offer. Give me $1, bitch, is her counter offer. I will fuck you up is her default mode. Today, however, she's crying out a hideous parody of an honest and outraged citizen. Her hands fluttering around her head. I am so glad that the law has finally arrived. Some justice has come to Dodge City. I have called in again and again from my house here on Carlton Way. That's 1831 Carlton Way, a collapsed shingled two-story that went down in the earthquake of '92 with squabbling heirs who can't decide what to do with the property. Mona has a tent pitched there. I have been outraged by the public drinking of intoxicants that goes on here in this parking lot. I am so glad the officers have finally answered my calls. Officers Lopez and Hernandez stare at Mona, whose fluttering hand speed has just gone from jitter to blur. Herman, meantime, has backed away from my door to better view Mona's soliloquy. He raises a finger, cocks his thumb, and points it at her. I fucking object, Herman yells. She irrelevant. Mona hangs on him. And you nasty little tiny Tim, don't know shit about the law. If you did, you'd know this drunk in the car here about to go to jail. Mona's eyes look like pinwheels on springs. I can't even imagine what she's on. Herman counters, it's you who don't know shit, you linkstick. Worse here, this is a ticket. Worse this is a ticket. Open container. And if he listens to me and stay in the car, he won't even get that. Mona nearly levitates in triumph. Roll that crinkly dwarf out of here. You too low to see it, Rick boy, but your fool here has his keys in the ignition. That be drinking and driving. She smiles evilly at me. A 502 for you, Davis. It's true, the keys are in the ignition, and a rising sense of dread gathers to the base of my spine.
Well, our next reader is Alison Turner. Alison Turner lives with her husband under the Hollywood sign in Los Angeles, California. She received a JD from the UCLA School of Law, and during the years of a busy appellate practice, reserved the hours of 5 to 7 in the morning for reading and writing poems. Her first full-length collection is The Second Split Between, winner of the 2021 Catamaran Poetry Prize for West Coast Poets. And we have copies here. Her poems have been published in Nimrod, Mid-American Review, Hudson Review, San Pedro River Review, the American Journal of Poetry, Catamaran, and other journals and anthologies. Please welcome Alison Turner.
Thanks for that, and thank you, Catherine, for another gorgeous edition of Catamaran. So thrilled to be in it. And for having sort of the grunge of Los Angeles and Catamaran. Thank you, my husband, and here's some more grunge. The first poem is from Catamaran. It's the first of 3 short poems I'll read. I don't know if you remember her, Miss Haversham appears in the poem. And for those who may have forgotten, she's a character in Charles Dickens' Great Expectation. She was left standing at the altar and retreated to the dust of spiders in their old mansion, never taking off her wedding dress and living in her bitterness. The other thing it might be useful for you to know when I read this poem is that a bufflehead is a duck. This is called The Grocery Cart. Someone has tipped the empty grocery cart down the slope and into the LA River. Someone has died or given up a certain way of life, and now the grocery cart is beginning to act like Miss Havisham might if her dry as dust disappointments were wet and no one was watching. The pose of arrogant regret, a thoroughly private craving for lost love, for a smooth roll along the aisles, the feeling of being full. Then into its life swims a bufflehead, ready to enjoy a bit of nettle among the rocks, the green algae of the shallows beginning to attach. This is what happens when you pause to sit on a stone-cold bench over a river and you haven't got a dog. This poem is called From the Latin Meaning to Make Familiar. Dusk, drowsy and gray, with mist settles over Hollywood Boulevard. A man carefully lays dry newspaper on the wet pavement and curls within its pages to sleep. The pungent smell of rain's afterlife and whatever it promised unfolds over everything. Water in the gutter runs for the sewer and beyond to a rising sea. In the newspaper are pictures of where I used to live, cars up to their chests in water like bulls standing in drowned rice fields. Some foreign country that can't be here, but is. Is no one looking for him? The man, I mean, the one I just passed. And why tell us the ocean's surface is warm to the touch, as if that could mean something, maybe something intimate? And this poem is called The God of Rats. Tree rats crouch under the hood of my car in the heat and oily smell the engine gives up after dark. They spit out the husks of palm nuts scavenged from the yard next door. After that, they will sharpen their incisors on my compressor hose and take a nap. I am thinking of ways to kill them. I handle the traps with tongs and outsized gloves, employing the vocabulary of destruction like a god who must distance himself to work. I will save my car. To the north, fire clouds spark on their columns of smoke. Rain evaporates before it hits the ground. Rats worship their own god. He gives them soft skulls that flatten through cracks, the cunning to hunker down in enemy exhaust. To the north, the pall of smoke is so dense, it's midnight at 4 p.m.
All right, we have one more reader for you tonight. Our last reader is Charles Hood. Charles Hood is the most frequent contributor to Catamaran. He was in our second issue, and I think he's been in maybe 12 issues altogether. Is that right?
Not enough.
Not enough. He even published a book where half the book was essays from Catamaran.
The good half.
The good half. Okay. Okay, so even in his bio it says here, Charles Hood is a frequent Catamaran literary reader contributor. His most recent book is Nocturnalia, Nature in the Western Night by Hayday. Please welcome Charles Hood.
I like deserts because deserts are honest. You know what the weather's going to be. Hot in summer during the day, cold in winter at night. And by looking at the orientation of the arroyos and the alluvial fans, you know which direction the water will flow if and when it rains. Everything is exposed, especially emotions and geology. Major religions come out of the desert, at least it did in the history books I grew up with. According to conventional narratives, Islam, Christianity, Judaism all began as desert religions, as did the faith systems of Australia's first people, the Anasazi traditions in the American Southwest, and beliefs of the Nazca line creators in Peru. Of course, that version of the story I grew up with ignores Hinduism, Buddhism, Shintoism, and Confucianism, among others. You need to be self-reliant to survive in the desert, and some people move to deserts to avoid the clang and clamor of humanity. As the old saw puts it, all of the plants in the desert have prickers and thorns, as do all of the people. Desert plants bear caution-taped names like bitterbrush and fishhook cactus. Cholla comes from the Spanish word for skull. Cholla's spines have microscopic barbs, easily in but not easily out. And Cholla's stems are one reason desert hikers keep a pair of needle-nose pliers in the car. Night-blooming datura, or Jimson weed, is also called devil's trumpet, also called loco weed, because it contains dangerous alkaloids that cause hallucination and death. All parts of that plant are toxic. It is not true that you can whack open a cactus and drink the water, though in middle school, not knowing any better, I tried it with a prickly pear and a Swiss Army knife. Mostly I just got spines in my fingers. I guess if you were lost and needed water, and if you had a shovel and a tarp and a metal pan and a rubber hose, you could dig a pit and layer sliced cactus pads into it and cover it back up with the tarp, and then collect the droplets of water that would condense on the tarp and drip into the pan at the bottom of the pit. But in doing all of that work, you'd need about a gallon of water to drink. Plus, if you had a shovel in the first place, it would be better used to scrape out SOS letters the size of a Cadillac, and or chopping snakes in half to roast and eat. Place names confirm mutual hostility. The desert to us, and us to the desert. New Mexico has a black wilderness of lava, flows, and sagebrush called El Malpais, Spanish term for bad country. Burning Man has made Black Rock Playa famous, which is a shame. It used to be a nice place to go, flat and lonely, and good for model rockets and shooting stars. Death Valley National Park seems to be well named, since visitors do die there every year. Usually it is speeding, not snake bite or heat stroke, that causes the most fatalities, although there's been a surprising number of plane crashes. The United States began to get serious about the North American deserts in the 1850s. California had become a state by then, and while nobody gave a hoot about any of its previous exports, tallow, hides, mission architecture, some second-rate wine, now that there was gold and lumber and marketable scenery on the table, Alta California began to attract the interest of big money. But before the mines could be expanded or the indigenous populations more efficiently enslaved, there would need to be railroads and telegraph lines. Military survey teams were sent out with haversacks and theodolites to walk back and forth for however many years it took until all of the passes were known and all the approach grades were measured and a feasible route figured out so the Iron Horse could send mining profits east and return with land-hungry rubes eager to settle the Edenic landscape where, the brochures promised, rows of orange trees would grow themselves. Some of the places the first teams surveyed did indeed become rail lines, such as the Tehachapi Loop, in which freight trains beat the grade by coiling over themselves in a circle so the rising train passes directly above its own caboose. Clever engineering, that one. Some toll roads became two-lane highways, but then were abandoned when better, faster routes were magicked into being, like the Lincoln Highway over Donner Summit. Some survey routes became nothing at all. Deserts are good places to put atom bombs, both the bombs themselves and nuclear waste afterwards. My parents saw an above-ground atomic bomb blast once. One reason I'm obsessed with Michael Light's book, 100 Suns. He accessed archives and classified material to make an art book documenting Nevada's many above-ground tests. Who knew death could be so beautiful? Space aliens are attracted to the desert, much more so than to Scranton or Paris, perhaps because they blend in so easily. In Werner Herzog's movie Wild Blue Yonder, Brad Dourif, who later played Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings, is an alien who works for the CIA and lives in the decaying on-the-skids town of Nyland by the Salton Sea. Aliens call us all Earthlings, which I don't mind so much, sort of like an earthier, loamier version of calling hobbits halflings. But a better term for us might be groundlings, not in the Shakespearean sense, but the other definition, when a faulty aircraft or errant teen has been grounded, that's it, no more going up today. According to an exhibit at the Griffith Observatory in Hollywood Hills, on Jupiter, I would weigh 496 pounds, to which I say, don't I already? It feels that way every morning. What rum little creatures humans are, to cite C.S. Lewis. On a list of things that soar, human beings would be basically last place. Compared to everybody else in the universe, we are the left behinds, the clock diggers, and the scab eaters. We are mine slag, we are sky spit. Luckily for us, the desert does not mind. It accepts the inevitable deaths of the single-jack miner and the martyred prophet with equal grace. Let the airplanes fall out of the sky like wounded seabirds. Let the floods churn and the asphalt peel and shift, because under it, behind it, before it, after it, there will be the desert. The desert always. If you live in a green place, what can I say? You're an optimist. I have gone ahead of you, and I will save you a place in line. The desert will not worry about you. It'll be here whether you come later or sooner. If you want to stay where you are, stay where you are. It'll come to you instead. The desert does not care about beauty mark or borrow pit, what we prefer or what plants we have seconded and approved. There are so many of us in the desert and out of it, but that's all right. It is a big landscape, and in the end, it can take in all of our dreams and bones, all of our bones and shards, take them all in and clean them and lay them in a line in the starlight, one by sparkling one. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Woo. We have magazines for sale. We have books from some of the speakers for sale. I also want to mention that Catamaran is a small nonprofit organization. We survive on donations and subscriptions, and we have some envelopes in the back if you'd like to make a gift, or if you'd like to subscribe. We greatly appreciate that. And let's all give it up for our readers tonight: Todd Turnidge, Amethyst Loscocco, Andrew Fague, Oshetsky, Mathews, Alison Turner, and Charles Hood.